I think the most important thing for training a pioneer needs to be a love for people. I think you need to look for people that have got a love for people. Is the first and foremost. I've always grown up loving people. People to me are much more important than things and situations and meetings and committees and all these things. I think if you don't love people, then it's very hard to train a pioneer who doesn't love people. And second thing is the listening ear. I think you've got to be able to listen to what's going on in the community and in the culture, and you've got to hear what people want, what's going on. You've got to not just listen with your ear. I think you have to listen with something that's within you, some kind of intuitiveness, I guess. Some people might call it discernment. I think you've also got to have a watchful eye, and you've got to watch what's going on around you and in the community. That's really important. And again, see the changes and be able to ring the changes and to be able to connect with the changes. And I would then go along from that and say you need to sniff out opportunities. Be creative, find new ways of doing things, and especially it's about constantly being sensitive, I think, to things that are going on. If you see that there's, I saw here that there was nothing for some of the young mums who came in and had struggles in their life. The school couldn't fulfil that. They didn't come to church, so who was sharing with them about Christ and his love? So for me that was the thing. I read a lot. I read what other people are doing. I'm a great networker. I Facebook. I come and be my friend on Facebook. And I'm a networker because I think it's important to find out what other people are doing. I have lots of friends that have done pioneering around the world, and so I talk with them and I connect with them and find out what people are doing and chat and have conversations with people. I think you have to be sensitive, but you can't have such a thick skin that you take everything in a hard way. I think you have to be able to be sensitive to people, but thick-skinned when it comes to yourself. And the other thing, I think you have to be not to be afraid. I think you have to be a fool, really. I grew up in a background where people used to talk about being a fool for Christ, and I think that you do have to be. So you have to not be afraid of looking embarrassed, and you have to also not be afraid of failure. Because I think, it might fail, things might fail, you've got to attempt it, but I'd rather die trying than not try at all. The gifts for pioneering, I suppose, in me did start to show up before ordination. It was part of my DNA because my parents have been pioneers, really. My dad was a pastor of a church in London, but I grew up with my parents running a late night coffee bar when coffee bars were in the first time round in the 1960s, and my mum and dad used to do a coffee bar in Soho with people in London. And so I always kind of grew up in that environment where you tried new things and you attempted new things and you did everything you could to bring people to Christ and to show people who Jesus was. So I would say it's probably part of my DNA, and that's where they initially started to show up. I've always been a creative person, always looked for opportunities, always looked to entrepreneurial skills, really, I suppose. And I think that if you're a pioneer and you're looking to train pioneers, I think they're the kind of gifts that people maybe need to look for. I wonder whether it's important for me to be an Anglican or not and be a pioneer. I think anybody can pioneer. I think in any denomination. I haven't always been an Anglican. I grew up in a Pentecostal church. I've been involved with the New Church movement in England. My husband's a Baptist, and we're both pioneers, really. I would say we both do pioneering. I'm an Anglican at the moment. I became an Anglican because I loved the Anglican church. 5 or 6 years ago, God drew us here, and it was a very definitive moment in my life. And I started to pioneer first, and then I became ordained. So I've kind of done it a bit, perhaps the wrong way round, but I think for me, being an Anglican, you can be any denomination and pioneer. I think it's irrelevant. And I think in the culture of pioneering, I don't think many pioneers actually see denominational boundaries. One of the things that seems to come up quite often is that pioneering is quite new to the Anglican Church. I come from a house church movement, or a movement where pioneering, I grew up with the Pentecostal pioneers, so for me it's been pioneering over the years. And I think the Anglican Church perhaps has more recently come into thought about pioneering, and therefore there's not so much finance involved for pioneers, and I think that it would be really good for us to begin to see how important pioneering is. If the church is in decline, then the only way that we're going to get new people is not by moving people around. I think it's quite often the comment has been used, it's not about moving the deck chairs around on the Titanic. It's actually about bringing unchurched people to Christ and getting them to have a love for the church. And that's what I see one of the things that I'm doing, is to grow people who don't know Christ. People who a whole generation has missed out, but who come to Christ, grow in faith, grow to love the church. Yes, the church is really important to me. Without the church, people will die. But that they don't come first and foremost. These people are not going to come because first and foremost they love the church, because they don't know what the church is. They don't even know what the Anglican Church stands for, or any other denomination for that matter, quite often. So it's about teaching them. I suppose in 5 or 10 years' time, I'd like to see myself doing exactly the same thing, pioneering, maybe pioneering more new works, and growing the works that they're making sure that people are being discipled and they're growing in faith. And I would like to mentor other pioneers, because I think pioneers, it's a lonely job, and I think pioneers need encouragement from people that have done it, and mentoring and hope that we shouldn't give up, and encouragement for each other. What gets me up in the morning? I think I'd be fair to say new obstacles, new challenges, anything that somebody's told me is impossible will get me up in the morning. And I think when it comes to Cafe Church and comes to Thirst, it's about seeing new Christians grow and walk in faith, the excitement of having new life, of seeing people who have never come to faith, don't even know anything about Christ, coming to know Christ, growing in faith, being discipled, and then getting excited about going and doing the same thing in their own communities. One of the girls that is with us at the moment wants to go and do the same thing in the community that she lives in, which is a very deprived area, and says, I can see that what Christ has done for me has changed my life and my family's life, and I want to take that to people that need him, and so just to pass it on. I don't get paid for what I do, and at the moment there doesn't seem to be much money in the broader church to pay me. We are applying to funding, and I think sometimes if you work with certain groups of people, there are funds available, and there are some trust funds and grants out there which people can pursue. But you know, I'm reliant upon my husband working, and my husband bringing in the salary, or me doing some kind of temporary work in between. But it's a really tough time, and for us, because we do a lot during the school week, it's quite difficult to hold a full-time job down. And I think this is something that the church is going to have to look about, its investment. Where are we investing our money? I always think that we invest our money in the things that we think are important. And if the church is in decline and we're losing people, then we need to think about a way financially to put our money where our mouth is, maybe, and to begin to think about how we might be able to grow the church.